Good day, YouTube. Moparmodeler here, Mr. Darby. This is the second video in my 65 Coronet build. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to mix paint. I hope you find, this video interesting, and maybe it'll, answer a few questions you may or may not have, and be helpful to you, and enjoy this video. Hello, YouTube. I'm starting off here on my series for the Coronet 500 on how I paint. And first, I'd like to talk about how I mix my paint. Now, I have many different techniques depending on the type of paint that I use. For this project, I want to use this acrylic paint. It's made by Folk Art. I guess you can call it a craft acrylic. It cost $8.99 at Hobby Lobby for 4 ounces. 4 ounces is a lot of paint. And of course, out of the bottle, it won't spray through an airbrush. I don't think it was originally made for an airbrush, but it actually works quite well. So the things that I'm going to be using to get my paint ready for airbrushing is I have 2 of the same jars, and you can see it's all sitting on a medical scale, or empty jar is to get my tear weights, because I like to measure by weight the difference between the paint and the what I use to thin the paint. Now, one of the things I do, and it's important for me, is on the lid of the jar that's going to have the paint in it, I write down the brand of the paint and what the color is, including the number of the paint. And then I also like to put in what I used to thin the paint. And I don't know if you can read this or not, but at the bottom I put washer fluid, which is short for windshield washer fluid, because that's one of my favorite go-to thinners for mixing craft acrylic paints. This is probably the cheapest way to paint a model with an airbrush, is to use craft acrylic paints. Now, I use the cheapest windshield washer that you can get. You can get it for under $2. And Super Tech, I don't know. I think it's a Walmart brand, but I've used it for more than just mixing paint. But you want to get the one that is just basic. You don't want anti-streaking or anti-fogging or any of that stuff. You just want the plain basic windshield washer fluid. And the reason why this works so good is it has just the right amount of alcohol in it to help to thin the paint. And then also it has detergent in there, a soap, which helps to keep the paint from tip drying and to flow better. It'll lay on your project a lot better. And this idea of mixing craft acrylic paints will work for anything, not just model cars, but it does come out with good results. And if you mess up, if you haven't cleared it yet, you can easily strip the body without any craziness and start afresh. And it's not toxic. You're not going to kill yourself with vapors or anything. So then also, you see here I have a plastic spoon. I usually go through 2 to 3 plastic spoons. And the reason for these spoons is not for mixing anything. The spoons are to paint. It is better to paint the spoons and mess them up and throw them away than paint your car and mess up and then have to strip the car. So I can use the spoons to get the exact mixture that I want for the airbrush that I'm using. So the idea of weighing the weight, so you know, a half an ounce of paint and a half an ounce of windshield washer fluid, that should get you close to what you need for a consistency to spray through an airbrush. But also, I like to use, when I do the paint, one of these little, you know, battery operated mixers here to mix my paint thoroughly. Okay, so here is my scale. There are two ways you can zero it out. You can first turn it on, and it comes on and it shows 0. The scale is zeroed out. When you put your jar on, you know, when you put the jar on, it's hard to see. I put the little jar there on, and it shows that it weighs 3 ounces. Now over here is a button that says tare. Hit that once, and it goes to 0 pounds. But I don't want pounds, I want ounces. So I want to hold it till I get the mode, and it's switched the 0 on the ounces part. So if I move this, it now shows 1.78 ounces in the negative here. You see the negative sign. This is pounds, but we're not messing with pounds, but that negative sign also represents here that the ounces. When I put the jar on, it now shows 0. Now you notice I don't have the lid on the jar because you know, when I'm mixing paint, I don't have the jar on the lid. So now I can go ahead and put my empty jar that I've pre-selected for this. This is, right now it's showing negative 1.08. It's not easy doing this. I'm going to go ahead and now put my empty jar on it that I'm going to use, and I look down and it's showing 0. So this jar weighs the same as my, you know, tare jar is what I call it. An ounce of paint usually is enough to do a model. So I'm going to take the windshield washer fluid I showed you earlier, and I have it here in a little ketchup style bottle you can buy cheap, and I'm going to squeeze in a half an ounce, which is actually quite a bit. Right now you can, you know, if we look down, it's showing 1/4 of an ounce. When it goes to 1/2, I will stop. So I like squeeze bottles because I can control how much I put in there. And if I put too much, I can always get an eyedropper. See, now there it says I'm at 1/2. I got a 1/2 ounce of windshield washer fluid inside of there. And see, it's just, and you're thinking, well, it's blue. It's going to change the color of your paint. Well, it's not really going to affect your paint whatsoever. I want to pause this for a second while I open up the jar of paint. Okay, so I've opened that other jar of paint. I've opened up my paint, but while I was messing around with that, my scale went to 0 because it times out. So what should I do? I can either re-tare it to 0 with an empty jar, or with what I have in there, I can simply just turn it on, and it's showing grams, 0 grams, so it's tared out already because it's sensing the weight. Hit the mode and make sure I have my ounce. So right now that jar is at 0, but I know I have a 1/2 ounce of windshield washer fluid in there. And the reason why I do the windshield washer fluid first is because that way the paint doesn't stick to the jar and it's easier to mix. So let's get here to the jar, zoom in a little bit. Okay, so what I forgot to show is things that I use is I got these little squeegees. It takes a while though to get this paint out, so It's really, really thick. And sometimes I just go ahead and dump it out of the jar, down the thing, and I watch how much is showing in the on the scale. Now generally it's going to double in size, and so now this is what sucks, is my scale just shut off. So what I want to do now is because the scale is shut off and I know I'm only going to go to 1 ounce, but I don't know how much paint is already in there, I have to get my little jar here, turn it back on, it's tared out, go back to ounces, take the jar off, and then put my mixture on it, showing 5/8 of an ounce. And I'm only going to 1 ounce because I've already got a half in there from, so I'm just this paint is so thick. You know, sometimes you have to literally, now it's showing 3/4. Sometimes you literally have to add more. Now it's showing 7/8. So you gotta be careful. More than likely, see, now I'm at 1 ounce exactly. Give it a little twist there, and I like to try to clean out my thing. See, now it's showing right at 1 ounce. All right, so I'll put that in a safe little place because I may use it again. It's at 1 ounce of paint. I'll show you here. See, it's showing, I wish my lighting wasn't so terrible. It's showing 1 ounce. So, and if you look now that the paint has settled more, it's actually looks like there's a little less paint than washer fluid. And that's because the paint is heavier than the washer fluid. So naturally you're going to have more washer fluid. You know, but I have found that this technique really helps to get an even thing to where you're not always messing around with it. So now I'm gonna get my little mixture thing, and I like to make sure it's inside first, then I turn it on, and I just sort of get it to the bottom and go in little spurts. Sometimes you gotta move the jar around, get it mixed really good. You want to stay down inside very well so you don't get a lot of air in it. You know. And then I like to turn it off while it's in there. And if the paint is mixed good enough, your mixer should come out pretty much clean. I mean, not perfectly clean, but pretty much clean. Now we will test it in our airbrush and see how well it sticks. I'll set that up and then I'll restart the video. Alright, we're back, and I've got the spoon set up and you can see the paint. This is the cheap $14 airbrush that I'm going to try to use. One of the first things I like to do before using an airbrush is to run the same stuff in it, the same thinner that I use in the paint. So you don't need much. You know, I'm not going, it's a craft acrylic, so it's not really crazy, but I'm not going to worry about running the spray booth because then you won't be able to hear me. But I do have a mask that I will be wearing, and I'll show you that here in a minute. Here's my paper towel, and I can see how it's spraying. Normally I wear gloves when I do this too, because I like to spray on my glove to see how my paint's coming out. So when I go to paint, you'll see me with a glove, but I like to check to see how everything's flowing before I actually hit the subject. Alright, so the spoon, I've already cleaned it off with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and I will add some paint to the airbrush and let her rip. I just want to get the rest of this cleaner out, and so I don't need a lot to find out whether or not this paint works. So I'm getting just some in a fresh eyedropper. Drop some in there. And then spray a little out to see if it, I think I might get me a new paper towel. Spray my paper towel here. And see, now I have some yellow coming out. I do have a flow. Now I can try to spray the paintbrush or the spoon. Normally I hold the spoon with my gloved hand, but that's kind of hard to do with the video. So, you know, start at the bottom of the spoon. That's my test strip. Make sure it's coming out. And then I just start going over it. Sometimes, because it's a metallic, you literally have to switch airbrushes to get an airbrush that will take the metallic. Now, it's wet, but it's very light. I don't want to get it so wet that it starts to run. So I'm going to let that side dry, but I can flip it around. It's hard to see because this light washes it out. But, you know what? I want to hold it with my hand. Yeah, you guys are working here with me, so, you know, you can feel my pain. Alright, spray first. Make sure it's coming out okay. And then go over. Figure out your distance. And it's already out of paint. It went through that. Well, no, it's not, but it feels like it. Always start on something else and move up to your project. Don't start spraying on your project. And see there, I don't know if you can see it, but there's little fish eyes, and it's probably because I didn't clean the inside of this spoon and I went a little too thick with the paint right away. So now I'm going to go, the back is dried enough. I check, I still got some paint in there. I'm going to start on the cardboard, and I figured out my distance. And it's starting to sputter. I want to put more paint in. Let it dry. Put another squirt. I might go 2 squirts. You know, this really isn't a whole lot of paint. It looks like it, but it really isn't. And you can put a cap on it if you want. You know, I'm not, so you can see we're not getting crazy. I don't know if you can see that fish eye in there, but that's not from cleaning the spoon and going a little thick. So start spraying the thing. It seems that my everything is, my flow is good, so I don't need to add any more stuff. And now you're starting to see the yellow. This is going to be a bright yellow. And this is a color shift paint, so it should, I want to come here. Now this is a double action airbrush. It's doing pretty good for never using it before. And once I get so far, and you can see as I go along, I can put more and more on there. But I want to stop, because I don't want to get it to where it runs and it's fish-eyeing there. That's because the spoon's not clean enough. Now on a double action, I can just push down and only air comes out. But when I pull back, then it comes out paint. So I can push down and then just blow plain air over my subject here. And that way it, I can use that to dry. Yeah. I don't know if you can see it because of the light, but it's really got a really cool shifting effect this paint does. Yeah, so I'm going to dry it a little bit. And it's just shining pretty bad. Let's see if it'll focus. I wish that light wasn't so bad. There's a few little fish eyes. There's, but one thing too is with this paint, if you get enough on there, you can polish that out. But the fish eyes is because the plastic was not cleaned well enough. When you clean the plastic, whatever shine is on the factory plastic, you want off, because that will cause. So I want to put another coat on. I'm going to keep going until I'm out of paint. I start on the cardboard and then I work my way up on the subject so I don't splatter on it. Splatter sucks. I like to go thick because that way I can I want to lightly polish this before I clear it, but I'm not going to use any kind of product. I'm just going to take a diaper, a cotton cloth, a clean t-shirt will work, and after it dries, I want to lightly rub over it and get whatever loose paint that's formed on top off, because craft acrylic tends to just loosen up on it. Okay, so I want to just blow dry this. I'm not putting out paint, just a little blow dry. Get it dry quicker. This also works if you're painting something and you notice that where you haven't painted yet, there's a little piece of dust. You can blow it off first. In fact, when you're painting a car, you want to blow on it without paint before you paint, and then when you get get it free from any kind of debris, lint or whatever, then you can go down, spray on your paper, your cardboard, whatever you're using. See, it's not coming out good. See, sometimes you gotta mess with it. See, now it's coming out good. See, if I would have done that on here, it would have splattered, and now it's not. So yeah, you wanna I wish this is just a spoon. It's for practice. See, my airbrush is messing up. When it doesn't want to paint, you just simply spray it on something other than that, and then get it going. Then hit your thing. You want to make sure you have full control of the paint on your subject. You don't want splatters, because splatters are hard to fix. All right. Yeah. And see, it started to stick up. That happens a lot when you're using a heavily metallic paint. And I'm thinking that this airbrush is like a 0.3, so it's really pushing it to try to get out. And by the way, for those of you who are probably wondering, my air pressure is set at 15. 14 to 15, somewhere in there. That's my favorite pressure. I like to just thin my paints out to where it works with that pressure. I don't want to have to keep adjusting my pressure all the time. I like to just set my airbrush and let it go. Alright. Sometimes too with these fish eyes, if you heat the paint up, you put it in a hot box, yeah, it's really showing now these fish eyes, because it's dust that was on the thing, and it's avoidable. It could have been avoided if I would have just cleaned it a little bit better. All right, I think that's enough paint. So I'm just going to dump the rest of it back into my container. I've decided that it flows good. All I need to do now is clean my airbrush. You don't want to let them set and dry. You want to clean them also with the same thinner that you used. If you're using an enamel or if you're using an enamel or a lacquer, you know, you use whatever thinner you use for that, which should be either a lacquer or a thinner. But then when you're done, you always want to hose it out with water to get all the other crap out. You know, you don't want to leave the caustic material in there. Paper towels are wonderful too. I like to just stick a paper towel in there first, soak up what's in there as much as I can, dump a little, and this is something, it doesn't hurt your airbrush. I heard people say it does, and I heard people say it doesn't. All the best painters that I know, they do the same thing. You put your finger on the tip, right, and you back flush it, okay, and then you can spray just a little bit through it, and you don't do a constant spray. You do hard, and then kind of go light, do hard again, go light, and then, you know, you go ahead and dump out what's in the bowl out of it. Okay, and then I like to take, I should have had a couple paper towels already handy. I like to take a paper towel and wipe the bowl out again, because whatever's in the bowl obviously is going to go back into the airbrush. A lot of times I use the blue shop towels because they're, you know, they got more meat to them. If you're using craft acrylics, you can also use, you know, a cotton t-shirt or a diaper, because you can wash them in the washing machine, you know. Want to spray out the rest of the goo that's in there, and you see there's nothing now in the bowl. But then when I take and add more windshield washer fluid, you don't need a lot. You can see, I don't know if you can see it, but I can see little metal flake particles. I'm going to back flush it again by putting my finger, and you'll see it's already changed color. It's got crap in there. Yep, I know I used a not so nice word, but that's why this is not intended for children, this video. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Light, and then hard, light, then hard, light, and then hard. And you can see it's still got a tint, but not a whole lot. I'm going to dump out what's in there, spray out the gun, and then I want to put more in there. Now, you should take these apart and clean them every once in a while. I mean, when you change colors, you definitely want to really change. And see, now I'm back flushing and you don't see much color, but you see a lot of metallic flake. And if you go through here with another color, and you don't want it metallic, you're going to get a little metallic in there. And then we're going to take my cleaner towel so we can see, and then light spray, light spray, light spray, heavy. And you can, you know, there's no residue. You can see light sparkling. You probably can on the video, but there's no yellowing to it. You know, spray it hard, spray it hard. And the reason why you go light and heavy is because the needle has more than one surface area, and light is one part, heavy is another part. In between, you can go in between. You kind of want to work the range of the needle to get the paint out. Okay, about went through that. Now, once you get this and you have the color out and you've used the metallic and you don't want the metallic in there, the way to do that is on a craft acrylic, get some floor polish here. And you don't need, just put, it'll go in straight. Put a little in there. A little more than that. Okay. And then you spray that through, and what happens is that the floor polish is sticky, and it will literally grab hold of. Spray it through first till it comes out. Now back flush it. You can see it bubbles, and see it sounds different even because it's thicker than windshield washer fluid. Spray it again. Spray light. Spray heavy, spray light, spray heavy. And now, I spray my hand and, there's no color in it at all. And I can't even see any what do you want to call it, any metallic. So I just dump what's left out. And I'm going to go back to this because now I got to get that sticky out because you don't want no sticky in there. Back flush it really well. Light, heavy, light. Light, heavy, light, heavy. You're not going to see any colorant come out because we've got all that out. But we've got that stickiness in there from the... Alright. You can see it's getting foggy from all that. We'll put some more in there because I really, really, really want to flush out that clear because it's sticky. And you see it bubbles like that. That's because of the soap that's inside the yeah. When you get here, you don't have to spray it on a rag because it's clean. You can spray it inside of a a catcher like this. And what I like to do is just put a towel laid over, not hard on there. Well, actually, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm being stupid. Put a towel over that and just finish it out in there. Let her rip. Try not to dump your crack cut. Alright, I'm going to put some more. Now what sucks is, what I just painted, I put my arm in. See? See that? I just ruined my spoon. See where it just came off because it's not dry? Anyway. Fortunately, it being craft acrylic paint, it will come off very easy. I guess that's a good example because I can show you how easy it is to come off. Alright, so this pretty much wraps up how to, get your paint ready. Make sure that it's the consistency you want and the color that it's going to be when it comes on the model. How to clean your airbrush. Now another thing I like to do after cleaning the airbrush is, and we used a cheap airbrush, which is, you can see that the results were good on a cheap airbrush. I don't store my needles in the airbrush. And also, by taking the needle out, I can look at the needle and see how dirty it is. And you can see that's really, really clean. You got to be careful with these needles because it doesn't take much to mess up that tip. I mean, not much at all. You could sneeze on it and it'll mess up the end of that tip. But the reason why I don't store my needles inside of the gun is because it'll get, if there's any residue or any stickiness or whatever, it will seize the needle up in there and make the needle sticky. So I like to take the needle out. And you can also, clean the needle. Make sure you keep the needle with that particular airbrush so you don't lose it. Now, so good thing about cracked acrylic paint is when you get a goober on you like that, you can just take some of this windshield washer fluid on a rag like this, and it's gone. I don't have jaundice anymore, and that's how easy it is to clean up. Unfortunately, I did mess this up, but that gives you an idea. And once it dries, let it dry thoroughly. And then once it dries, you can test out what types of clears that you want on it. I usually use a lacquer clear, an automotive clear. Yes, it's over an acrylic, but once the acrylic's dry and it's smoothed out, that lacquer clear will go on. And I know a lot of people like to use floor polish as a clear. I have honestly had bad luck using floor polish as a clear. After a couple of years, the clear will start to change color and yellow, or it'll crack. I've had bad luck, but I've always had good luck with a lacquer, a lacquer clear, like one coat lacquer or whatever. So with that is how I get my paint mixed to use in an airbrush. So with that, you have a wonderful day. So this is the conclusion of the second video in this series on how I build a model car using the 65 Dodge Coronet. Again, as I said all throughout the video, I hope you find this helpful and that you've enjoyed it. Stay tuned for how I prep the body and spray painting the actual model. Thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.